They just sent me a news item that I should read. Jesus. I don't think I will. You wouldn't want to hear this about a new psychological survey, well, from a psychological think tank, what's involved with people having to change and break habits. It requires 6 steps. Which they detail by name, and I was going to read them, but see, you already got the point. And do your own. Imagine 6 different steps that you have to go through to break habits, and then after you do it to yourself, then off on your own, just yourself go. Raise your own eyebrows. Understanding and the everyday mind. You can figure out life, man can figure out life mathematically, man can figure out life psychologically. Man can even figure out life biologically and spiritually, but the one thing he can't do is figure out life. No. In the hidden mountains, those who discover the great secret also get a small prize to go along with it. One man mused, "A pencil is my friend, ink a questionable companion." He was later able to apply this to the relationship between his dependable mind and his exciting one. The only freedom the simple have is that which the more complex allow them. Question: is this a political or neurological commentary? Being up to date. One man's life fell apart, but if you think that was bad, then his car did. Once you are civilized, if you'd refrain from routine mental combat, you wouldn't slip back into savagery and get ulcers and stuff. The real distinction between man and all the other creatures of this world is that he's the only one who enjoys talking about himself. Definition. Advice. 2 of life's 6 billion diverse thoughts trying to contact one another. It has been said that people of the forest dream of gods who are green, and even pondered if being of green origin determines one's forestry abode. But men's minds have yet to expand this question into the relationship of their own brain to their own apparent personal thoughts. Specialized medical update. For a few, what would be worse than hearing a doctor say, "You have ulcers," would be the words, "I'm sorry, but you have the stupids." The more civilized becomes the world of man, the more the alpha wolves controlling the pack speak of democracy and freedom. Rhetorical query. Is life a foxy devil or what? This or that, a poem. You can talk about the future, you can think about the past, you can stand on your head or sit on your ass. You can look to the right, you can look to the left. You can run with dichotomies till your thinking turns to mush. One man's position expressed thusly: life made man so manlike, so's he could fret and sweat over manlike problems. Sometimes I think it went overboard. Bad news time. There is no nobility in smartassism, and damn little intelligence or usable info. Oh, all right. For tonight, try it this way. A mystic is not just a fancy name for someone who can think for themselves. A mystic is someone whose brain can think differently. Everyone likes to believe that they're more complex than they really are, while they're actually even simpler than they can imagine. Offering to help the intelligent who ask is not the same as giving advice. Looks are everything, unless you look too deeply. then they still are. But it's just not quite the same anymore. Okay, the truth. In discussing human matters, words are everything. Always have been, always will be. By making men believe that they run life, life manages, by and large, to be left the hell alone. Education as practiced by the ordinary, the obscuring of the unnecessarily obvious. Today's theology. What? Theology. I knew that. I knew that. I knew that. To keep them happy, God gave dogs fleas and man thoughts. One man once thought, thoughts wouldn't be so bad if you didn't have to put them in words. Today's Milky Way legend. Life periodically sends down someone to save mankind just to see how dumb they still are. One man offered this verbal assistance to his son. No matter where you are, no matter when you are, you can correctly grasp the significance of whatever ideas men are presently taking most seriously by simply observing dog turds on the sidewalk before a rain. Just before the fisticuffs, and bloodshed, the discussion had been centered on the question of which is the greatest threat to a mystic? Planning, predictability, sensibility, the desire to be liked, or a fear of fisticuffs and bloodshed? As told in one legend, the reason that extraordinary thinkers go off so often alone is so that they can be by themselves. As witness again of how superior life is to you, consider. Every time you stick out your tongue at it, it doesn't necessarily stick its out in return. A quick fix to save you the time and expense of driving around from one shopping mall to another. If it's human, it lends itself to metaphor. And finally, stupidity cannot be slain. Its opponents keep reviving it. From last time we were talking, one little follow-up. You recall I was using as a jumping off place, tying on widespread external observations, then as applied to one internally, which was prefaced with, you can rest assured that we're still civilized as long as. And I plucked out 3 contemporary examples. As long as men still believe that they need to take a test to find out if they have a drinking problem, or that people will still, apparently intelligent people, will ask, is this landfill, this toxic waste dump being placed in this poor lower class neighborhood because it's actually the best location, or because it's the poor lower class neighborhood? And the third one was that they now at universities and colleges having courses to help clear up any uncertainty as to what constitutes rape. The thing about saying that you're still, can rest assured that we're civilized, and in case you missed, I just picked out the examples, in case you did miss the subtle tail end of last time. No smart assism, remember, you try and extract that. But you would have to face the fact, male or female, that rape's rape. I tried to carry it a little further to make your head swell a little bit, and when I suggested that perhaps the day would be coming shortly, that there would be courses to help clarify the uncertainties as to what constitutes murder. You know, did you actually kill this person? And you sort of laughed, and then we wandered around in other areas, and it seemed so definitive. It is also definitive from any reasonably intelligent view. By, not my definition, look in the dictionary under intelligence. By humanity's view, that a woman certainly knows if she's been raped. If she had sex and she didn't want to. Then the question, that's the only one I brought up, but I wanted you to see how subtly, and then one little more whipped cream on the encouragement we should all feel vis-a-vis that we're still civilized. The uncertainty. And it's now men and male apologists, not that that's of any great importance one way or the other, of saying, well, we do need sensitivity classes or discussions to clear up the uncertainty. Now, everyone laughed easily when I pulled out the example of take a 10-question test as to whether you might have a drinking problem, and I point out, no need to. You don't even have to take question number 1. If you suddenly get out a pencil or look for a pencil, there's the test. And you all, as you do, you laugh again that you do hear it, that if you wonder. All right, by the same token now, what sort of man needs a sensitivity or needs to take a course for them to clarify? The way they described it, what I heard was that these courses are to help clear up the ambiguities, the uncertainties. It is almost approaching my joke about the uncertainties that they will come. They'll have to have sensitivity classes or panel discussions on what actually constitutes murder. What sort of man does it take? Now, let's take their word for it, that this is supposedly now very common. What sort of man does it take to have sex and have any doubt whether the other person was fully agreeable? I mean, there's your answer. And in one sense, that should even be to an intelligent person who is not so civilized that he's overly civilized, because if he was that much overly civilized, he could be sexually dysfunctional anyway. But I was going to say there should be, from one view, even less question on a man's part as to whether, what did she actually mean? No, I was a little uncertain. There should be, in a sense, even less uncertainty about that than there is about a man who hears, do you have a drinking problem? And him saying, well, I don't know. I drank a lot. You see, you continue to laugh a lot at that you do hear the reality that if you have to say to yourself, or you hesitate, but you understand, because of the physical demands of sex, for a man to have any doubt, for him to go, well, I'm glad, perhaps I do need a course in this, perhaps I'll go and listen. It's not an attack on humanity, because I'm getting around to complimenting them again or trying to encourage you to see what's going on. Consider, from one view, with no hostility, how inane, I can't think of a dirty word that is synonymous adequately with inane or imbecilic, doltish, churlish, that a man had any doubt. It got to, and a professor calls him in, a counselor there, man in college. And he says, do you know that Miss So-and-so has accused you of date rape? What? I'm shocked. And they talk for a while, and then the counselor, being a good psychologist or trained in something, brings out, now remember, we're not laughing at him. We're talking about civilization on the hoof. We're talking about right at the front of the parade. And they go, well, now that's not uncommon. In our generation now, that's why we have these classes. I want you to go to counseling, because she decided not to actually press criminal charges. But she said that you actually engaged in date rape, which sounds better. You notice that only happens with the upper classes, or the middle class. There's no such thing as date rape down in minority and lower class neighborhoods. Well, they're too busy avoiding the toxic dumps to. Well, let me wrap it and you get the tail end of this so we can press on. Do you understand that from one view you can say, now just take it as, we're talking about writing past real quick as a more intellectually alert person, not making a partisan judgment, but you just recognize the fact that this is just insane, or this is just ridiculous. How about that? That a man is going to say, we'll assume he's not excusing himself on the basis he was drunk or drugged up, but he just says, well, I know she hesitated, and she said no, and then she stayed there, she didn't fight me off. And they go into this long discussion, by now, about, well, now, just because she didn't fight you. Even the law now recognizes in many jurisdictions now that sort of physical resistance is not required for the sexual act to still constitute rape. So now psychologists and other softer scientists, no, we'll let that one go. Now I say that it is open to discussion, that it is good for this to come out into the public after all these thousands of years, for it to come out now so that we can have these kind of discussions. We can have a sensitivity training and bring in men and try to clarify this. And so the student goes, plus he's found out he's not going to be criminally charged, so of course he's greatly relieved, and he'll go, well, I'm hurt. I liked her. Oh, what's her name? Yeah, I remember that was last weekend. I really liked her, and I can't understand it. Well, I'm glad you brought it to my attention, and I'll certainly go to class. Now think again right quick. In the same way, I know the alcoholic test you guys thought was easier, more direct, of how ridiculous that is. But think, what kind of man has any, I'm talking any, you understand what any means? I don't have any. A man who has any doubt that he's having sex with some other person, that has any doubt whether the other person is absolutely, totally committed to it. No. Just freely stand back and let me jump on you like a whale. think what kind of man has got to be informed, there's got to have some sort of training or talk about to clear up the uncertainties as to whether he had sex with a partner who was in any way unwilling. You've got to admit, from let's assume again that you're able to do this in a non-partisan way, a non-hostile, non-aggressive manner, that you understand that takes somebody even dumber than the guy that's going to take the do you have a drinking problem test. Do you understand? It is literally, let's don't dwell on it or we'll all begin to get depressed over the... All right. About to wrap it though. Do you see what I was getting at, the subtle part? That it is, forget the specifics, forget the individual case of somebody being raped, because I tried to give you an easy one, or it sounds a little more socially tolerable, date rape, but it still constitutes rape. But a man needs some uncertainties cleared up. I'm assuming by now all of this that you can go, ooh, gee. But notice, this is not some social anomaly going on. This is quite widespread, that it is something that would seem to be, by any reasonable, by definition and observation, just the height of silliness, stupidity. And yet it's not. It is at the forefront right now of social sensibilities, social progress. We have taken something. I say we, life is doing it to man, but it is part of what I try to keep getting you to see, of the total use of my word civilization. It is taking something that is obvious, that your laughter is a proof of the obviousness of it, or it is to you. I already knew it was obvious if you could see it. That nobody that has anything resembling just a kind of middle-of-the-road brain would have any doubt if they were having sex with somebody who was in any degree, just an ounce, a millimeter, a milligram of any hesitation. They have got to be poster boy for doltism. But look at it. Rolling? But it is taking something that is obvious in the same way that anybody knows what a drunk is. Anybody knows they got a drinking problem unless they've got a drinking problem so bad they don't know it, and then they'll take the test. Civilization, not just in toto, not just collectively, but what happens to the human individual mind and its potential. As tonight I put it to you, and the one, if you noticed, right toward the end, that said was a definition of education as practiced by the ordinary. I could have entitled it Education as Practiced by the Civilized, or Education as Practiced in the City. The obscuring of the unnecessarily obvious. Because it is always unnecessarily obvious, or it would not be obscured. It is obvious what constitutes rape. It doesn't have to be bloody rape. It is, in the same way, the joke is, my little joke, there's no doubt what constitutes murder. Or how about now, spousal abuse? That's probably as widespread or as much as date rape. That we must take men into, men are just men. Maybe they don't realize what they're doing. That we need to have counseling. We need to clarify. And men going, well, what do you mean I'm abusing my spouse? And there's the woman standing there with a black eye and blood running out her nose. And he's standing there on the news. He go, what's this stuff about spousal abuse? I never heard of this when I was growing up. And there stands the woman, bloody, and him standing right there in front of it. You understand? It's that same kind of, I can say silliness, ridiculousness. But you understand, there's obvious. I mean, that's the only thing to call it. He hit the woman. Or vice versa, to be fair. Maybe, she hit him. Do it the other way. But he hit her. And him going, well, what is this? And so the police maybe will say, well, sir, or ask her, do you want to press charges? Do you want us to arrest him? Maybe she says, well, I don't know. And then perhaps an officer says, well, now, I could point this out. We have a counseling service that the court oversees that rather than making a criminal charge and us arresting him right now, if he will agree to go into counseling and discuss this, maybe they try to clear up the kind of uncertainties that men seem to have, or some men seem to have, as to what constitutes spousal abuse. I mean, you hit somebody, well, that's it. Or even push them. What's there to discuss? And yet there it is. And it is taken, do you see? And it is, but it is taken as progress. That you have taken the obvious. That if you hit somebody, and it doesn't have to be just that. That's why I made the great extreme example of murder. But it could be assault. Well, maybe we should have more sensitivity trainings or discussions here in the community. There's so many children fighting and young people fighting. Maybe they don't understand what actually constitutes, violating someone else's space, or assault as the law calls it. What do you mean there's uncertainty? If you just have any walking around senseless, somebody comes up to you on the street or in a park or anywhere, and a guy comes up and says, hey, and gives you a push, is there any uncertainty? If you're just walking around sane, if you're not too civilized, that your hormonal life and that your wolf pack life is not yet gone, if you're just an average sane person, is there any, you understand that it is silly in a sense. But then you've got to see it as not silly, is the point. It is a form of progress. It is a form of increased civility. But notice how convoluted it is from an individual view, if you can see it. That you can say, we could all say, well, it is progress if we can get men to quit beating up women. It is progress if we can get people to quit becoming alcoholics, I guess. But how are they doing it? If you don't see the convolution of it, is that going to stop it by renaming it, by changing it, by making people sensitive, by trying to clarify the uncertainties as to what actually constitutes a drinking problem, spousal abuse, assault, murder, date rape? Because you stop and you go, well, there can't be any question. What constitutes an insult? Yeah. Perhaps we're insensitive. Well, shit, everybody knows how to insult somebody. You try it, and if it doesn't work, you try another one. You try another one. And if the other person just ordinary won't take but 2 or 3 shots, hit his race, religion, nationality, his sexual preference, his looks. You always get to that. His mother's looks. And then you got to say, you do 4 or 5, and finally the guy goes, hey, what the hell is this? And you go, wait a minute. We should go into counseling. Instead of us fighting, maybe I'm unclear. Maybe we should go into some sort of counseling and try to clear up the uncertainty. It's silly, except it's not silly. If it was silly, life would not be doing it collectively. So out with the collective, with everyone else, it's irrelevant. I mean, it is progress. You should feel good that life is still civilized. But do you see what it does to the individual potential of thinking if that is all that drives you? It is a parade marching along. It is life still being civilized. Everything's all right as long as people continue, as long as life has the collective. And by the collective, I mean the sane, ordinary middle class and everybody else that runs the world. The backbone of this planet. As long as they're continuing to obscure that which is unnecessarily obvious, which it slowly changes, and they, in a sense, obscure more and more of the unnecessarily obvious. And at least you take that as just some sort of fancy-sounding sentence. It's not just this, but look at it this way. The unnecessarily obvious is increasingly the survival, the physical, the survival level, the hormonal level, as I sometimes call it, of man. It's always necessary, but is it necessary for men to rape women anymore? Not that it was ever, acceptable, I'm not saying, but it seems to be less and less tolerated. It is a kind of progress, that it seems to be less and less tolerated that civilized people, or that men in general, mankind in general, assault one another. We're still doing it, but notice the talk about it. And you could laugh and say, yeah, big deal. They talk about it. They have symposiums, and the murder rate's going up here where I live. Could be. And so murder is less and less a necessary, obvious act of man. And they obscure it. Rape, forcible having sex, to whatever degree, is less and less of an obvious necessity. Gayness is on the increase. Impotence is on the increase. Or worse than all that, I just read that there was some church convention here and they'd gotten like 20,000 teenagers to sign a pledge that they were going to refrain from sex until they was married. Now, I can't believe it. I just got through pointing out that we should all at least be assured that we're still civilized and things plugging right along, but sometimes even life frightens me when I hear about it. But at any rate, do you hear? The point is that the hormonal life, the obvious hormonal life of man, the obvious less civilized life of man, is of increasing. And it doesn't just go in discrete jumps. It moves forward and it goes back. I pointed this out to you if you take the picturization of a parade. The parade in general is moving towards civilization, but within the parade, there are whole bands of little people, whole little groups. They can turn around and go backwards while the parade's still going. They can go sideways. They can sit down. They can cause all kinds of little havoc inside the parade, but that parade is marching on. And if they cause too much problems, the parade just simply mows them down. But eventually everyone is moving collectively in that direction. Individually, when you try it, you get arrested, you get put away, you get lobotomized. The parade goes on. But internally, it apparently is little pockets of things that will pop up and they'll be renamed and then they'll seem to disappear and then they'll pop back up 10 years later, 50 years later, 200 years later. But in a slightly different way. And you can look at it at any given time and say, well, that's silly. Which is why I was about to read the one about to change, you must go through, everyone goes through 6 distinct steps. And they've got them named. Pre-anticipation of change. And we can do all that. And then, if you remember, it was a little news item I made up. One guy said, hey, how'd you quit doing so-and-so? And he said, I quit. He said, oh, no, I mean, how'd you really stop it? I stopped. Ah, come on. You can say, well, that's obvious. That's the only way to do anything. That's not obvious. Other ones, if I point out, going and joining a weight loss place. And you can make fun of that. Or go to a place that let's all get together and we'll quit drinking, we'll quit smoking, we'll quit overeating together. You can make that sound absolutely ridiculous, which from one view it is ridiculous. But notice, it is not ridiculous. Notice how big it is. The Jenny Craig operation is bigger than we are. Yeah. Jenny Craig has more followers than I do. How about that? I don't mean just I. There are more people wanting now to lose weight via Jenny Craig than want to be mystics on this planet. How about that? I didn't mean just me. I want you to understand, though, that all those examples, that is civilization. And that is absolute cause. I thought you would enjoy the intro, the preface to it, that how to rest assured that we are still civilized and on the right track is that we can, and you can see your own by now, they pop up constantly. But that we now have to have discussion as to what constitutes rape. What constitutes, really constitutes now, with no uncertainties, spousal abuse. Do you, by any chance, get a pencil and paper, have a drinking problem? That is progress. That is a sure sign that life is still civilized. But do you understand, even by me taking out, or trying to encourage you to take out any smart-assism, do you understand that is just totally irrelevant to an individual person doing anything? That is just meaningless. It is of no significance individually, other than negative, of you letting those kind of interests that are driving everyone else, that you take the whole parade as playing the only music to which you can intellectually march. Because if that's the way you take it, then that's the way you take it. If that's the way you take it, that's the way it takes you. I was going to, now that we've used up all the time, tonight I was going to present two questions that are still related. One question, first question, if there is a secret core, some secret activity that was the core, the real origin of religion, why is it not at least as popular as the outer shell of the religion itself? And, second question, mystical activity can seem to either calm the mind or excite the mind. The question is, what do you think? Well, the first one, really consider it. There's not a trick question, there's not a trick meaning, but consider not only people who actively consider themselves to be mystics or interested in occult matters, New Age matters, because there are many people in the academic world that at least acknowledge the fact that there is some reality to the basis of men believing in a secret activity of some kind. Their shading of their acceptance of it might be different than a armchair drugstore mystic, but even academics, theologians with a big T and no particular passion of religion, they will admit that amongst all the stories, even the records of the monasteries within Christianity and Greek Orthodoxy, and then within Buddhism and Zen, etc., that there's no doubt that there is some validity, some basis historically for this idea of there being within all religions. I'm using religions since they have always been the kind of storehouse, public, flat, storefront, scenery for any secret knowledge, any secret kind of activity going on, that religion has always been accepted to be the public side of it. So, back to the question. If there is, as has been so long believed and still suspected and talked about, if there is some sort of secret knowledge, secret experience, secret method, but let's call it secret knowledge, make it easy, that is the core of all religions, is the core and the origin, which put quite simply could be the secret of what life is, which then filters down into the idea that perhaps there have been people who did talk to God at one time, and that's part of what every culture's and every religion's creation story is, that in some way they at one time were in direct communion with God, and he told them what was going on, and then things kind of got out of hand, and we've sort of drifted down. We've fallen from that kind of direct communication. But that at one time it was possible. And so it would be, let us say, the secret knowledge. Then they expanded ordinary people, dreamers, into all sorts of fanciful, more mechanically complex dreams of it. But it would be easy enough to look at as simply the secret of life, the origin of life. Where the hell did all this come from, the universe, and what are we doing here? If that is knowledge, that's what everybody wants to know if they had their guess. If they had their wish, would be that. So let's say that was it. Then that's easy. I mean, you don't have to be a strange, weird person. You can be an academic, assuming they're not strange, weird people. I'm assuming that. That you can assume that, all right, that's what people dream of. And even the academic could say, well, me too. If I thought it was possible, a physicist, a theologian, a philosopher could say, well, if that's what it is, that kind of secret knowledge and all that hocus pocus that people put up with, if it would actually tell you where we came from or where the universe, how it all came about, hell, I'd be one. That's what I started off to be, a theologian, to be a physicist, to be a cosmologist. That's what I started off for. But that's kind of, I don't particularly believe it. The point I want you to see is, it is not that far removed. It is not that negatively exotic amongst ordinary sane people on this planet, the idea that there might be, or it could be, not without basis, some sort of secret core, some sort of origin from which all of man's spiritual ideas, all of his mythologies, all of his religions, that it came from. That it's like a core and it's continuing to hang around. People still talk about it. People still read about it. People still write about it today. And people today still read about what somebody wrote about it 2,000 years ago. The question. So let's just take it as a not unreasonable, a not totally illogical, impossible premise that was the origin of all religion. Then you've got this question that no one asks. If that is true, if there is some sort of secret information that was the core, the origin of all of man's religion, in the full sense, all myths, but all religions, why would not that be at least as popular, well known? Didn't want to throw you a popular / well known as the religion itself. And even those with just an academic interest that there are many books written on the matter of the idea of some great secret hidden work. There are books, although I don't guess the real drugstore mystics read them, but there are a few books by academics on the subject. Even they cannot ask the question. The reason I brought them back up, if I missed you there, was to point out that those with no particular passionate interest in the subject, that even if they theoretically acknowledge that it could be possible there's some sort of secret knowledge that was the basis of all of these religions, even they, being somewhat standoffish, somewhat non-personally involved, even they never come up with a question of, well, wait a minute, if that's true, then why is it not as popular? Why is it not as well known? Why are people not as interested in that? If that is actually the core of it, if that's what's driving it, and they can almost buy it, like, well, that could be. I mean, it's not unreasonable to say that. As strange as religion and all of man's myths sounds, and we've got to assume that they're at their highest speed, are allegorical. They're trying to give us a message that cannot normally be put into words. So if that be true, what religions are, if there's a core that was actually non-allegorical, there was just the information, why in the hell? Why aren't people more interested in that? I mean, if they can't find it, why isn't it just simply better known? I ask you first. I told you that was one of the two questions. Why? All right, I'll quit the theatrics of that part, but there is a useful purpose of you asking yourself that even later or several more times inside of your own brain. But now into a general pointing out in response to my own question on what appears to be an external level. The reason, now we're operating on the premise that there could be, screw all that, there is, or we wouldn't be doing this. I'm just going to use the terms everyone else has always used, secret knowledge, some secret piece of information. I know people like to believe, no, it's a whole bunch of information. It's not a comment, it's a commentary in the first dictionary sense of what a commentary is, a series of comments. In other words, people like to believe, once they even have an interest in secret knowledge, they believe that secret knowledge is like a book. And that's what they normally refer to. It's a book, or it's a long manuscript hidden somewhere. You never hear that it's like a slip of paper, like a fortune cookie that some guru's got in his pocket. It's always that it's hidden in some forbidden monastery, and it's scrolls. I mean, it's 2 or 3 story cave full of these papyruses. What is it they write those animals with the big lips and they write things on them? Platypuses. It's this whole monastery full of these ancient platypuses that they've written all this stuff. But it's never that there's one guy somewhere or one place where they got this huge monastery and you find, we got the secret knowledge, and it's in a drawer. Just a small, like a little drawer, like the end of a chest over there by one of the guys' beds, and it's one slip of paper. So that's something else you might think about. Nobody ever considers it as a comment. Nah, secret knowledge would be a commentary, not a comment. Why? So we're operating, like I said, on the basis that there is such. And that is so often the dream's not unfounded, that it was the core. It continues to be. It is the core. It's right down the center. It is the octane in the fuel. It is driving all religion. Of course, it's driving all of civilization at the intellectual level. But it's driving all religion. It's the basis of all myths. It's the basis of all fairy tales, all allegories, all metaphors. If it were not for that, man would have no need for allegory, for metaphor. Man would just state the obvious, which would not be civilization. And we would not have, back to where we started, if man just stated the obvious, then rape would be rape, abuse would be abuse, drinking problem would be a drinking problem. But hey, where do we go from there? Where'd be the fun? How about all these people that attend the AA meetings? They're suddenly, however times they go, once a week, we got these hundreds of thousands or millions of people thrown out of a hobby. And they're going to be out there on the street, wandering around, probably getting drunk again, getting in the way. So the obvious cannot be seen like that. But we're operating on the basis that there is such knowledge, and has long been dreamed, is the core running right through all of this, and has been nonstop. And I said, why would it not be as popular, as well known? Why are not people as interested in that if they knew? Or the many that suspect, the many that just claim, well, it's got to be true, I'm just convinced of it. Then why the hell isn't it as popular, just at least as popular? And I'm being charitable, rhetorically speaking, to say why is it not at least as popular as the external shells of religion that covers it? Of course, it should be so much more popular that religion would be something like you abandon arithmetic when you took up algebra. Or I can think of stickier parallels, but we'll let that go. It had to do with your increased sophistication regarding sex. But should I wait? No. When you make a sexual tinged joke and people do not immediately laugh, it sort of tells you the crowd you're dealing with them. No, it doesn't necessarily. It just shows that you people are listening on a higher plane. You were expecting better. And you got Are we all right? Okay. So why is it not more popular? Because religion simple answers and methods. And let's call this the secret knowledge. Let's call it mysticism again for the time being tonight. The whole mystical, this is called mysticism. And real mysticism does not. Look at what religion offers. And this is not an attack on religion. This is simply the nature of religion. For anything to become religious, for a myth even to become popular and well known, but religion, what it offers is simple answers. And simple is not a criticism. It just means simple. It means direct. It means conclusive. It offers, I can wrap it up a little bit better, it offers simple answers, simple methods to the simple-minded. And that's not an attack. It's those who are satisfied with simple approaches, which are the simple-minded. That is the ordinary person. That's all of us at the ordinary level. They're simple-minded. That's how you're sane at the time, at your particular temporal and spatial existence. Is that how you are? That's how you are sane, is on that basis. That's how you're judged to be sane. That's how you apparently fit into the network of sanity, of local, ordinary sanity. That is being simple-minded, is you have to take reality as presented then, and that's how you know you're sane. That they say, well, just for instance, all right, listen. To be simple-minded is to be sane at any particular time. Take any, I'll just pull out one at random. If we said where we're living, the one of the simple-minded is they say there's only one correct form of government under which we should live, and that is a representative democracy. And let's assume that almost everyone here would go, yes, that's true. And if you didn't, it would simply be on the basis that you had decided that, no, it should be partisan. You would say, oh, no, we should be a socialist country. That's been proven time and time again. Democracy is not working, etc. But you understand, whether you agree or disagree, you take whatever the statement is. It could be that or it could be religion, where you say, hey, we got to quit fooling around with letting politics interfere with religion, because our country is founded as a good Jewish nation, a good Christian country. And somebody goes, wait a minute, it's not a Christian country. I'm a Muslim. No, it's not a Christian country. We say we are, but we're not. The point is, you take what is said as, you can either accept it or disagree with it, but you take it as being the kind of energy running the parade. You're letting the same kind of fuel that's running the collective fuel you up here. It doesn't matter whether you agree or disagree, because somebody got to disagree with it, but you understand that is being simple-minded. All right, your being is dumb enough for them to say, all right, let's take a test and find out, do you have a drinking problem? And all the questions are yes or no, and you've already laughed. Yeah. So you've already done this already, and you laugh like, what kind of idiot? It's the same kind of idiocy for life to say, well, what we've got to consider now is what kind of direction should the most pressing problem for us today is what sort of political path should we take having to do with the total health care of the American people. That is the question facing us. And you go, well, that's true. You're in the same league. You're sitting next to the guy that reaches for a pencil and they say, do you possibly have a drinking problem? And he goes, where's the pencil? And you laugh. That's the same thing. That's being simple-minded. You take just because everyone around you, and they're sane, they're doing it, just because they say, well, the most important question, at least in this area, about politics, about religion, about social reform, is this. And you go, okay. You're a torpedo head. You're an elephant turd in the parade of life. But see, an ordinary person goes, wait a minute, you don't know what I think. It doesn't matter. See, you already laughed when it says, well, you didn't know what I was going to answer on the question when it says, do you ever drink before your friends do? And you go, well, wait, let me think. Do I? See, it's too late for that. You picked up a pencil when they said, we're going to give a test now to determine whether you have a drinking problem or not. You go, well, that could be worthwhile. The test is over. And it's not just about whether you have a drinking problem. It shows you're sane. It shows you're ordinary. You're as common as asphalt in the parade. For those of you that take umbrage at being elephant turds. That's being simple-minded. Back to my response to question 1. Religion, why it is more popular than the secret core, that which is the actual knowledge, that which is the actual origins of religion, why it is popular is religion is brought to the collective level. It is a publicly accessible response to the simple-minded, which is everyone except a damn mystic. And there's nothing wrong with being simple-minded. They are honest, upright. They're your mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, husbands and wives, accountants and attorneys, bankers, insurance salesmen, accountants, and all other forms of decent, upright, ne'er-do-well people. Yeah. Religion offers simple. One more time. That's no offense. That means sane. That means that which is digestible. That which seems to be serviceable to ordinary thinkers at the time. It offers simple answers. Religion, for instance, all the great questions that press man, or he says it does, religion gives you an immediate answer. That God is looking after you. Allah, no matter how it seems, Allah will eventually see to justice. Retribution to those that have stepped on you. Accounts will be settled by God. God loves you personally. He understands your problem. It will all be all right after you die. Now, don't just laugh. That is simple answers. Now, it's easy to laugh. I know I brought it up in other ways to say, boy, that's easy to say, you're okay when you die. But the world is full of people, the leaders of countries, not just those in religion, but the political leaders, they will stand there with a straight face, as they're supposed to, and say, well, some of the things that goes on in this world, it just belies any civility in man, and it defies my understanding. But I'm sure that once we die, God will explain it. He'll sort it all out and explain it, and everything will be okay. There you are. And don't just laugh. The majority of humanity, one way or the other, pay allegiance to that. They will stand there and say, yes, that's true. Even though they may apologize for not attending temple or mass or church or whatever enough. But they will say, well, yes, that's true. There'll be some justice later. In real mysticism, there is no such simple answer. Of course, that's a trick, because once you're a mystic, you know that the question sucks to start with. The question was somebody that they stepped in something in the parade, and they keep hopping around on one foot, and they keep going, look at this. What the hell is this? And you turn around, and you end up, and there's like 3.5 billion people doing that at any given time on the left foot, and you look around, and then there's 3.5 billion people, or 3 billion people doing it on the right foot, saying, what the hell did I step in? And if you don't watch it, you'll go, what is that? Of course, then you stepped in it. There is no simple answer. And what I was going to get to, and obviously will not, and I'll pick up, but is also the methods. You could get many people to slide by the simple answers. And yeah, that's kind of, I'm not sure I believe all that, because it's easy for them to say, yeah, after we die, it'll be all right. And so if you say that's the difference between real mysticism or the pursuit of that kind of secret knowledge, if you're saying that's the difference, then I still don't understand why it's not more popular, because I can't accept that I'll understand it all and everything be worked out after I die. It may be true, it may not be, but if there's a chance I can understand it now, I'd be more in favor of that. So that they might think, wait a minute, that's not the reason. But then what would get them would be what I guess we'll have to pick up next time, is that as religion offers not just simple answers, but simple methods. Again, it's not an insult, but simple, apparently conclusive, easily describable methods of what to do. And may I be so bold as to suggest that in the real world of this kind of activity, there's a certain, I don't know, lack, scarcity of those sorts of direct, simple methods. And yet I was going to point out that there is almost a no man's land, or there's almost a intermediate level wherein it has continually, and up until today, that which many people accept as being mysticism seems to belie that there are methods that seem to be quite simple and direct. I've mentioned some before, people attempting to remember themselves, attempting to remember the name of God, attempting to remember their own existence with each breath, all of that. But then, see, I was going to leave it there, but I'll cheat. Then you got to pick up my second question of the night, which was, mysticism can do one of two things, either calm the mind or excite the mind. The question is, what do you think?